Namanda Butsu 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 Namanda Namanda. Please join me in Gasho. Gasho onegaishimasu. When a person realizes the mind of non-discrimination, that attainment is the state of regarding each being as one's only child. This is none other than Buddha nature. We will awaken to it on reaching the land of peace. Byodo shin o uru toki o ishiji to nazuketari, ishiji o bussho nari, anyo ni itarite satoru beshi to nammam dabutsu, nammam dabutsu, nammam dabutsu, nammam dabutsu, nammam dabutsu. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here together with you. This is a very special Hatsubon service. Of course, we are remembering loved ones today who have crossed over to the other shore in this past extraordinary year that we've all lived through together. We are grateful to be gathering here for a service for the first time since last year in March, to hold a service here live from the Hondo of the Buddhist Church of San Francisco. Of course, we are here with the ministerial team. We also are grateful to Kevin Yoza for his support, and to all of you for being part of this service. You may have noticed while we were in the Naijin, we weren't wearing our masks. We are all vaccinated, but then when we're outside the Onaijin, outside that space, we are wearing our masks and taking the precautions to keep everyone safe. And we're looking forward to maintaining a safe environment to welcome all of you back to the Hondo before long. So as we gather here today to observe our Obon service, this is a time when we reflect upon the lives of those who have crossed over to the other shore. We have a particular remembrance today for Hatsubon, loved ones whose names were just read, those who crossed over to the other shore since last year's Obon. We also remember those throughout our lives who have crossed over to the other shore, and perhaps also those whom we have never met. And this Buddhist remembrance of those who have come before comes from a Buddhist sutra called the Urabongyo, or the Ulambana Sutra. And this is the story of one of the Buddha's disciples, Mahamudgalyayana, who himself remembered his mother with a sense of deep gratitude after she crossed over to the other shore. It's said that as he was sitting in meditation one day, he summoned his tremendous powers, for he was an awakened disciple. He could see beyond the boundaries of birth and death, and he looked deeply throughout the 6 realms, searching for his mother, and discovered that she had fallen into the realm of the hungry ghosts, a realm of great suffering, the suffering of unsatisfied desire, the suffering that comes about from one who lives with some attachment and whose life is in some ways conditioned and guided by greed. And so Mahamudgalyayana was shocked to see his loving mother having fallen into this state of terrible suffering. And so he rushed to his wise teacher, the Buddha, and asked him, what can be done? And how could it be that my mother fell into this realm of suffering? For she was so kind and so generous. And one commentary on this story tells us that the Buddha responded, indeed, your mother was kind and generous to you, as a mother should be to her child. But that generosity did not extend to the other children. She always kept the very best for you, sometimes denying other children the things that they may have wished to have. And so Mahamudgalyayana, reflecting on this, realized the great generosity of his mother in caring for him. taking on this heavy burden of karma, this deep connection she felt with her own son, at the expense of the results that it would bring for her in her future life. And so he asked the Buddha, what can be done to liberate my mother, whom I feel such deep concern for? The Buddha said, practice generosity, practice kindness for those around you in this world. And so Mahamudgalyayana, being a monk, he set out to practice great generosity for the people he was closest to in his life, his fellow monks. And so he gathered a collection of the items they would need for their daily life, pots and robes and all of the items needed for monastic practice. And he presented them to his fellow monks at the end of their rainy season retreat on the 15th day of the 7th month. And there was much rejoicing and appreciation for this generosity. And then Mahamudgalyayana, he returned to his seat of meditation, and he again searched throughout the 6 realms, and he discovered that his mother had been liberated. And his joy was so powerful that he leapt up from his seat and began to dance. And others who saw this joyful dancing from a monk who was very serious and normally, rather serious and stern, they joined in this joyful dancing, right? And so we too, now at this time of Obon, we reflect upon those who have come before, and we receive this powerful ability of the Buddha's teachings, the power of the Dharma to transform our lives, to transform all of the suffering of greed, anger, and ignorance through the joy of gratitude. Right? And so as I think about this story, it really resonates with me. I'm a parent myself, and I often think about, I hear these Buddhist teachings about how I should practice compassion equally for all beings, but like Mahamudgalyayana's mother, I naturally have first preference for my own children. Last month, we celebrated the 10th birthday of my oldest son, and as we were celebrating, as is our family tradition, my wife baked a cake, and she does something really interesting. She asks my sons to design their own cake. And so they'll draw a picture of what they want on the cake, and then she will decorate it herself based on their drawing. And so our oldest son at the moment is really interested in insects and bees. And so he said, he drew a picture of a beehive and some bees flying around the hive. And so my wife, she melted down butterscotch and Ghirardelli chocolate. And she made these blocks of chocolate, these chocolate bars in the shape of a hive, and 2 in the shape of these large bees. And one was a large bee, the other one was a small bee. So she had this very nice cake with these big pieces of chocolate. And as is our practice these days, we had a very small, kind of socially distanced birthday party. My kids, of course, are not vaccinated yet. And so we invited one friend who's kind of like in our pod. He's one of the only kids that my sons get together and play with regularly in person. So we invited him over, and he came over. We sang happy birthday. And as we were about to cut the cake, our guest looked at the cake and he said, I'll have the piece with the bee on it. Right? He wanted the bee because he loves chocolate, right? All kids love chocolate. But you know what I said? I said, birthday boy gets to pick. You can have the hive, right? So, even though as a parent, we try to teach our children to practice generosity. We try to teach our children when we have guests into our home, we practice hospitality, and we always give our guests the best of what we have. We always let them pick first. But the birthday boy, right? In that moment, right? I'm thinking about my son, and what I want is his joy. I could see his disappointment and his fear when he thought, no, I might not get to have the bee, right? So he got to get the bee, and our host had to settle for the hive, right? And so when I think about this, I realize that I am like Mahamudgalyayana's mother, right? I have preference to my own son so much so that it's like a kind of greed. It's a deep, deep attachment. And this is the way that it is for parents, for those who live in home life. We naturally have this attachment to our parents, to our children, to those within our family. Right? The Buddha and his disciples, they left this world. The Buddha and his disciples, they abandoned the home life. They set it aside. They left home and they went to live in this monastic setting. But those of us who live in the Nembutsu teaching, we're grounded in this home life. We remember these loved ones, our parents, our grandchildren, our parents, in some cases, children, grandchildren, spouses, these people with whom we have a close and deep connection. And as we reflect upon them and we reflect upon their lives, we find that they have shown for us this deep compassion and kindness. They have shown us this concern with preference for others. They've taken on this karmic burden for our benefit. And so how is it that they are to be liberated from this cycle of birth and death? How are they to realize this broad, open heart of deep concern for all beings? They do it through the working of Amida Buddha, through this daily life of hearing the Nembutsu, Nammam Dabutsu, Nammam Dabutsu, living in this life of deep attachment as these loved ones did, but guided moment to moment by the working of the Buddha's compassion, guided to hear this teaching and to awaken a heart of gratitude. For in this heart of gratitude and appreciation, from which awakens generosity. Because if we're truly grateful for what we have, we realize, I have so much. I have so much that there is enough even to share with others. Right? It can be the material things we have, but most importantly, the kindness and compassion in our hearts. There's enough in our hearts that we receive from the Buddha, so much compassion that there's enough to share with others. In our Hondo here today, we have the image of Shinran Shonin, who we remember, one who lived guided by this teaching. Our teacher who showed us how it was to live the Nembutsu in the midst of family life. Shinran himself had several children. He was married. And there's a story from the life of Shinran Shonin, a kind of a sad and troubling story about his eldest son, Zenran, who at one point, while Shinran was living in Kyoto, Zenran was in the Kanto area, the area around Tokyo where Shinran had many followers. And it's said that Zenran began to say, I've received this special teaching from my father. My father, to me as the eldest son, he passed down a special teaching just for me. And so if you wish to receive the teaching of my father, you must follow me, follow my guidance. I have this special secret teaching that I received just from my father to son. And so Shinran's other disciples said, wow, Shinran never talked about having a secret teaching. He never talked about something that would be passed down just within his family. So they went and they asked Shinran. They asked him, is this truly what you taught? Shinran says, you've known me. You know what I teach. You know that my teaching is given freely for all beings because it comes directly from Amida Buddha. I don't have even a single disciple. Not a single person gets a preferential treatment in my appreciation of the Dharma. And so Shinran went so far as to disown his own son who had been spreading this teaching. I recently had a Sangha member come to me very troubled by this story and said, why couldn't Shinran forgive Zenran? Why couldn't he forgive him? That's the one thing I can't understand about Shinran. And I think we have to understand that Shinran's mind dwelled in the Nembutsu, that he had awakened this heart that has deep concern for all beings, recognizing that he himself embraced in Amida Buddha's compassion, receiving this generous heart. This needed to be extended to all people. And so he saw the danger of this teaching of giving, the idea that there was some sort of preference given to his own family. And so he had to negate that, made this difficult step of disowning his own son. But I don't think that he did so with a heart of anger or rage. but that it was a heart of compassion. And he recognized that Zenran also was embraced within the compassion of the Buddha, that Zenran also was included in Amida Buddha's universal vow. So even though this bond between father and son in a secular sense was severed, Zenran also was included in this compassion. So we find that family relationships at times can be complicated, right? There can be moments of difficulty and challenge, but as we gather in remembrance of these loved ones, what awakens in our heart is this deep gratitude, guided by Amida Buddha, this marvelous compassion that goes beyond our everyday way of thinking. And so as we remember these loved ones on the occasion of the Hatsubon, we reflect upon their lives and how they are our guides to this world of wisdom and compassion. They guide us to awaken this vast heart of concern for all beings. And it's through that loving connection, through all those things they did just for us, that gives us this special feeling to wake up this morning or whenever you happen to be tuning into this service, to sit down and to hear the Dharma. That's their love and compassion guiding us to this moment, that just as they have been liberated and transformed by the Nembutsu, so shall we be transformed. In these words, Namo Amida Butsu. 本日の初盆というのは、今年の去年のお盆から1年間、阿弥陀如来のお浄土に帰られた方々を忍ぶ法要ですね。その法要は、この方々とのご縁を忍ぶことですね。この大切にするですね。私たちのためにいろいろしていただいた方々、私たちを優先してこられたことによって、この人々のためは今日この初盆にね聞くということですね。パソコンの前に座って日曜日の朝でもいつでもこれを聞いたら、この方々の導きによって本日の法要に参拝することになります。これは彼らの働きですね。私たちのために生きてこられたので、私たちの往生のために生きてこられたと気づくことは本日の初盆のことですね。彼らとのご縁によって本日仏様の御教えを聞いて、本日南無阿弥陀仏の念仏を聞いて、仏様が私たちもこの苦しみ迷いの世界から極楽の往生へ導く働きに気づくというのは、本日の初盆法要のありがたいことでございます。ですので、初盆裏盆へと言いながら、歓喜喜びの法要ですね。彼らがお浄土に往生できたことを喜んで、私たちも後にその同じお浄土に往生できることを喜ぶ尊いご法縁でございます。ではこれをもって合唱して終わらせていただきたいと思います。So in conclusion, I invite you to join me in 合唱。南無阿弥陀仏、南無阿弥陀仏、南無阿弥陀仏、南無陀仏、南無陀仏、南無陀仏、南無陀仏、南無陀仏、南無陀仏、南無陀仏。
Thank you, Sensei.